Welcome to another 10 with Ken. I'm Ken Steele. So far this season, we've been looking at the evolving design of higher ed campuses. In the wake of the pandemic, the adoption of hybrid work and learning, and as faculty have shifted from sage on the stage to guide on the side. Classrooms have evolved to enable hybrid delivery and active learning approaches. But plenty of student learning takes place outside the classroom. Campus architects and designers have been increasingly devoting space and attention to informal common areas on campus, where some of the most valuable interactions occur between students, staff, and faculty alike. These are the so-called third spaces between dorm room or office and classroom or lab. Expectations and opportunities for these spaces have expanded significantly in recent years. Let's take 10 and take a look. Especially with Gen Y and Z, we are not going to change some fundamentals, though. We are not going to change the fact that this is the most digital generation we've ever seen, that they want to bring their own devices and often have 2 or 3 they're carrying all the time. And it's going to be even more so when Gen Alpha starts arriving on our campus, who is toilet trained on the iPotty, who believes all serious learning occurs with a touchscreen and a connection to the internet clasped in their sweaty little hands. The real digital natives are going to expect always-on, everywhere access. Already, we've seen surveys for a decade that students value internet access almost as much as anything else in a space. They want some heating, they want some comfortable furniture, and maybe some caffeine available, but internet access is critical. In residence, American students in a recent survey observed that Wi-Fi was the single most important amenity in residence, twice as important as access to laundry facilities. So forget clean clothes, we just want a good internet connection. And of course, with the proliferation of electronic devices, we know, especially Apple users, need access to power cubes, to plug in USB sources, to various kind of workstation areas with power for laptops and for other devices. There's never enough in an airport. There's never enough in a library. There's never enough on a campus. And now we're even seeing the combination of that active learning mobile furniture with power cubes in untethered models like these ones. I haven't seen these in real life yet, but seems like it might be useful in some very select environments on a campus as well. I said early on that I don't think the campus is going anywhere, despite the fact that I'm waiting for my holodeck and I think VR is going to make online delivery way more amenable. Campus is still crucial as a place for people and ideas to collide, for sparks to ignite between people from totally different disciplines. They're crucial for the social engagement of young students who need that social integration in order to be able to succeed academically. And gathering people on a physical campus is going to be a critical part, especially for younger students, but in general for employees as well. Interesting study out of the University of Arizona a few years back found that if you tracked student movements on campus, they were simply using swipe cards to do it, but you could do this with GPS devices too. They could predict with 85% accuracy which students were at risk of dropping out based on the ways in which they moved around the physical campus, the times in which they gathered with the same group of swipe cards, the nature of those friendships, connections, relationships, the time they spent predicted whether they'd be successful academically. And so the pivot to emergency remote learning during the pandemic was a real sort of challenge to that integration. It was a challenge for keeping staff and faculty to feeling engaged and part of a common enterprise. It was a challenge to bringing on new students and integrating them into the classroom setting. Creating community in a virtual environment is a big challenge. We saw a number of experiments. A lot of institutions jumped on board 10,000 coffees to try to connect selected students with each other for informal conversation. I launched a platform just last year called Eduvation Circles to try to allow faculty and staff on campuses, on the same campuses and across campuses across the country, allow them to gather, talk about emerging trends and interesting ideas. And you're welcome to join me there as a free member anytime you want. The link will be in the slide. We also saw some interesting experiments with immersive VR sort of simulations of reality. Verbala is a platform some institutions used to try to recreate the experience of being in a classroom. Not the best paradigm to try to replicate virtually, but I understand the premise is to try to recreate the campus experience. Students frequently find their own ways to create online community that are quite different, like setting up Discord servers for their social clubs or for their courses so that they can interact with each other in a way that feels comfortable to them. Our campuses have shifted. The libraries may have been the first really to experience the need to pivot away from centuries of purpose, preserving fragile paper, keeping it away from sunlight, keeping it away from humidity, to a much different concept of what a library is for. Increasingly, they are learning commons where students gather in brightly lit spaces with lots of natural light, lots of comfortable furniture, and very few books, if any. And the nature of a library has evolved, and in most cases that evolution has preceded the changes to the rest of campus, I would argue. You can see this, at plenty of places. That was an example Queens was based on. Conestoga did a library reno, building a lot of study group rooms, a lot of learning common spaces, a lot of different space allocations than we'd ever seen before in a library. I often think as an introvert, this is taking what used to be very introverted space and turning it extroverted on campus. So we're embracing the extrovert potential of the campus space, because the introvert stuff we can do remotely online. We don't need to be physically in the same place to do that. I shot a couple of episodes of 10 with Ken at Mount Royal University, touring their Riddell Family Learning Library and Learning Center, they call it. Some of the most popular spaces on campus are those bookable group study rooms. Collaboration spaces are critically important. Maker spaces are appearing in libraries. There's a growing awareness of what they call third space, that not classroom, not residence room, but in between, there's a lot of learning that takes place on a campus, especially for a traditional aged undergraduate. That's why we see learning commons and atria established on more and more campuses, where students will gravitate so long as there's comfortable chairs, Wi-Fi, and a steady supply of caffeine. We see this at the University of Calgary in the sort of social staircase down the center of their new EEEL building. Well, it was new a decade ago. And we're seeing that on a lot of campuses where the number one request from student groups is to get more study lounges, more social lounges, more common spaces for students. The construction of new buildings, like the Haskayne School's new building in Calgary, opened just 2 months ago, emphasize interactive spaces, these kinds of flexible learning common spaces, but classrooms that are structured in a different way, social staircases, as well as sort of communal gathering spaces. Classrooms that are structured for dialogue, not for monologues or lecture delivery. That is becoming normal on most campuses. I think that building is a pretty good summary of a lot of those trends that we're seeing. We're also seeing a growing awareness that we want people to not only interact with each other, but to think creatively and innovatively. And to do that, psychologists are proving we need natural light, we need bright colors, we need comfortable furniture, we need a variety of ways to sort of foster creative thinking in a creative environment, often a less strictly hierarchical or formal environment, a casual environment where people can get comfortable and think. And we're looking at hallways and corridors in a way that says we can maximize their utility by creating linger spaces for students before and after class. We can maximize their potential for bringing people together as they move between offices, between classrooms, and saying, these are places for serendipitous interaction, places for interdisciplinary collaboration. And in fact, we've seen some institutions like Mohawk College in Hamilton restructuring their campus to maximize interdisciplinary collision by putting a prof's office and classroom at opposite ends, by forcing them to walk past faculty in other departments who are also moving between. You can create interdisciplinarity that way. Other ways you can do it through architecture are exemplified in the new science building at the University of Lethbridge.
The Science Commons is a perfect, state-of-the-art, best science building you can find. It's bright, it brings people together, it inspires.
The architecture and the facility has been structured to foster research, teaching, collaborative space, public space, all in a domain that actually brings together multidisciplinary researchers, but also the public and others at large.
I'm convinced that the solutions that we have to find for today and for future challenges are solutions that are best found at the interface of different disciplines.
Since neuroscience is inherently transdisciplinary, we bring together psychology, biology, biochemistry, physics, and the like. Having our institute be immediately adjacent to all our cognate disciplines makes our work far easier. It triggers new research approaches and provides us with the state-of-the-art methods in the other disciplines.
No doubt there are plenty of other examples out there, but few have produced such a handy video to convey the architectural vision. Over the next decade, we're going to see better and better online lectures, VR simulations, and AI tools to support students in learning activities that have always historically required them to travel to campus. Ready or not, the holodeck is coming, eventually. Already, though, formal lectures and seminars can be conducted virtually. Digital books and journals can be accessed remotely. Even museum collections are being digitized for VR access to the artifacts. The real enduring value of our ivy-covered brick or limestone campuses won't be housing books or lectures, but serving as gathering places for informal and serendipitous interactions, and for collisions of ideas that make sparks fly and that provide unexpected illumination. Eventually, third spaces may actually become the first or only spaces on campus. Whatever the topic will be for our next episode, the best way to see it first will be to join me on my new free online community, Eduvation Circles. Circles is a growing virtual community of more than 1,000 forward-looking higher ed leaders and professionals from across Canada and around the world. It's more immediate than an email newsletter, more interactive than a blog, and a great way to engage in year-round discussion, polls, and live streams with me. New episodes of 10 with Ken will appear first here, along with a full archive of past episodes. But if you're not quite ready for the future of online engagement, sure, you can just subscribe to 10 with Ken on any of a dozen platforms, including YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or even subscribe to my weekly email newsletter at 10withken.com. Thanks again for watching.